Well, welcome to another edition of 42nd Street Pete's Grindhouse. I had a request, and if you're not into wrestling, you may want to skip this episode. I was asked of my take on the CM Punk situation over the weekend in All Elite Wrestling. Now, somebody might ask me, what do you know about wrestling? Why do you know anything about wrestling? Well, simple. There was a benefit for Sabu years ago, and they were doing an auction, and Crowbar was putting on the event. I bought a ticket, and I had known Crowbar because he lived in the area, and I said, did any of you guys ever do an auction before? And they said no. So I wound up doing the auction. It was for Sabu. I met Sabu, hung out with him for a couple hours, cool guy, bullshitted. All of a sudden, I was known. And I went to a lot of events over the last 10 years. I was in Jersey. I videotaped a couple events. I was heavily involved with Women's Superstars Uncensored. I was one of their security guys. I also produced and distributed a best of DVD. So I got to meet and chat with a lot of guys that you basically see on TV today. Jay Lethal was always cool, always hung out with him. Steve Monster Mack, Rhino a couple times, Madman Pondo, Mr. Insanity Toby Klein, whole who's who, a bunch of people, some people that aren't in the business anymore, but it was always cool. So, we come full circle with this thing because I actually thought that AEW was going to be the answer to the WWE's dominance, and it started out good. Unfortunately, over the last year or so, I sort of started questioning some of the shit that was going on, because it seems like the owner and booker, Tony Khan, is a huge mark for ex-WWE guys. And, it was cool bringing in Sting. Sting's still good. Sting's, helping out Darby Allin there. Bringing in William Regal was good because he's a great trainer in the back, a great personality and really tough, hard-as-nails wrestler. But I sort of wondered why the fuck they were bringing back CM Punk. CM Punk was notorious for going off script and dropping what he called a pipe bomb during a WWE broadcast and left the company. He decided to go into the UFC arena, which I think he got his ass handed to him quite a few times. I'm familiar with Punk for the simple reason that I used to buy a lot of tapes when I was sort of homeless and living in this situation where I had no TV, no cable, needed something to watch. So I bought a lot of IWA Mid-South stuff, a lot of CZW stuff, and he started out in IW Mid-South. He did a shot in Combat Zone, I think one thing or something like that. Then he went up in Ring of Honor, and what put him over was that the bookers and owners of Ring of Honor saw something in him. I think at that time it was Gabe Sapolsky, Rob Feinstein, and Doug Gentry. Obviously, there was something going on there because there was a couple interviews that he said, and Rob's chimed in on this latest thing that now you know the real CM Punk. So, who is the real CM Punk? Some egomaniacal guy who thinks he's the best in the world? Because he certainly isn't. The thing with bringing him back was I was leery of him, and I was also leery of Bryan Danielson, because I never saw Bryan Danielson really work. But he impressed me with his matches with Eddie Kingston and other people. And honestly, Punk didn't impress me at all. He's got a big mouth, a smart mouth. And his finisher is that knee to the face that everybody's stealing. Well, I was sort of miffed because, they put the belt on Hangman Adam Page. He's one of the original guys that was there. He worked, in all these situations for 3 years, and, I honestly thought that a homegrown guy would deserve the belt. Okay, so he gets the belt, he does a couple title defenses on TV with Lance Archer, a couple other things. Then all of a sudden, Punk comes in, and with no fanfare, no build-up, no backstory, he takes the belt off of Page. Now he's bad-mouthing Page and saying that basically he wouldn't put Page over. Well, you know something, my friend? You're an older wrestler, and an older wrestler is supposed to elevate new talent, and you seem to be loath to do that. Then you do this whole friggin' deal where basically you get hurt right after you win the belt. You step in the ring and break your foot in a tag match with FTR. Well, that tells me there's something going on here, that maybe you're a little bit too old to do this shit. All right, so you're out with the bad foot. Then they make Jon Moxley the interim champion. Well, Jon Moxley is a draw, and he's a lot more over than you'll ever be. So now, the week before this pay-per-view, Moxley beat you in 3 fucking minutes on TV, yet for whatever reason on this pay-per-view, Moxley has to drop the belt to you. And then you're doing a press conference, and you're dropping F-bombs all through the press conference. Okay, so you got an issue with Colt Cabana. Who gives a fuck? All right? But now you're burying guys. And, I'm not a big fan of the Young Bucks. But you're basically burying guys who started this company. And in burying these guys, and it was supposedly a backstage altercation after the press conference, where I think one of the Jackson brothers basically got in Punk's face and Punk threw a fucking punch, which shows how professional he is. I don't understand a lot of this shit that Tony Khan's going, but it seems like a lot of the guys that started out with him have been pushed to the wayside so he can bring in ex-WWE guys. I thought you were on the right track for a while, especially when you brought in guys like Nick Gage, who has a worldwide reputation as a deathmatch wrestler. And maybe, the fans popped. Maybe it would have been cool to bring him in a couple other times or keep him on the back burner. Also, it's worth noting that he's with Game Changer Wrestling, and Jon Moxley holds that championship. But, the funny part about Gage was, and this is another AEW fuck-up, they do the picture-in-a-picture, and of course he was wrestling Jericho in a death match, that whole series, and Nick's big thing is to slice a guy up with a pizza cutter. So while he's working over Jericho with the pizza cutter, they air a Domino's commercial in the picture-in-picture. I don't know if it was a work, whatever, but Domino's got pissed off, and I cracked up because they got pissed off and pulled the sponsorship or whatever, it pulled the ads. Instead of following this thing up, because this is the reaction that Nick got, you didn't. So we're back to the CM Punk thing, and him, like Jon Moxley said, we're sick of your pipe bombs. You did it once in the WWE, that's enough. But doing a press conference, like I said, dropping these F-bombs every 5 minutes, burying guys in the back, creating a toxic locker room, which you seem to be fucking good at from past reports. I don't understand why you're there. I don't understand why. Is Tony Khan that much of a fucking mark that he's keeping you employed? Honestly, if it was up to me, you'd be fucking gone. Moxley is the bigger draw and the better champion. And I'm just going to go, this may tweak some people off. But some of this shit that's going on here, and I'll go back to past champions. Punk, you're not the best there ever was. You're not even in that category. Go for past champions that I know. Bruno Sammartino would have fucking pinned you in under a fucking minute. He would have killed you. Ric Flair could have a good match with a fucking broomstick, and obviously he'd have a good match with you, but he'd end up pinning you anyhow. Terry Funk would have murdered you. It goes on and on. You're not as good as you think you are. And the funny part is, I had to deal with your future wife, Miss April, in WSU, and her first appearance there pissed off the locker room so much that she was never asked back, and if she did come back, primetime Amy Lee was basically going to show her the error of her ways. I don't know what name she goes under now. You guys got married, and what somebody says, she's as toxic as you are. I don't know what Mr. Khan is doing, but he turned me off as a viewer. I was subscribing to that Sling TV, but for $40 a month to watch these spot fests, it isn't worth it. Guys that I like aren't being used. And let me go back to the spot fests. Some of this stuff that's going on here is like a video game mentality, and it's wham bam thank you ma'am, and like one of these pinning combinations should have been it. I'm tired of the false finishes. I'm tired of guys kicking out of fucking finishers that obviously would have killed somebody. These guys are leaving it all out in the ring, but they're also leaving a series of injuries, broken bones, and shit like that, which is definitely going to derail their career. The whole deal with professional wrestling is to suck you into a storyline, to basically get you emotionally invested in what's going on. And honestly, you haven't done that. It's nothing but a series of spot fests. And I like a lot of the guys that are there. I like the Dark Order guys. I like Danielson. Kingston was one of the guys from JAP. Great guy. Jay Lethal came in, and I think there was something to do with Punk's wife, because before she was with Punk, she was with Jay. Jay was one of her trainers. Now, I don't know if something was said there, but all of a sudden when Jay showed up, Jay got regulated to Dark Elevation for a while, which is bullshit. Why would a wrestler have that much power over a company that he can dictate what goes on? It's fucking bullshit. Tony, you're a mark. And you continue to be a mark unless you get rid of these guys and realize that you can't book the whole thing yourself. You have Ring of Honor. What are you doing with Ring of Honor? There's no TV show. You're having Ring of Honor titles defended on AEW. So what was the point of buying AEW and how many, buying Ring of Honor rather, and how many of those guys were dissatisfied and left? You know, this is a joke. There are guys that are under your employ. Dean Malenko, Jerry Lynn. There's guys in the back. Arn Anderson. I know Tully Blanchard left. But there's guys there that know how to book shows, and you're not using them. Another guy that's sitting around and still doing things is a 70-year-old Kevin Sullivan, who basically learned everything he knows about booking from the late, great Eddie Graham. So there's an unsourced tap, you know, that you haven't tapped. I don't understand why things are going this way, but I also just read on the internet today that Malachi Black just asked for his release because of mental issues. Honestly, dude, I think your fucking company's crumbling, and if you don't get rid of that little piece of shit CM Punk, it's going to hit the fucking wall and it's going to be the end of it. I mean, I don't know whether, you know, I got a funny feeling that Time Warner might have whispered in your ear that they want a name on TV to draw people, but honestly, at this stage of the game, and everybody I've talked to after that pay-per-view, and I've seen the fallout, I think you just turned everybody off to your damn promotion. And bringing MJF back, even though he got a bigger pop than Punk, which ought to fucking tell you something, ain't going to help. Because what are you going to do? Just have MJF take the belt? And I see he's got another entourage. We haven't, you know, figured that one out yet. I guess we'll know Wednesday night, but I won't because I'm not subscribing. I'll watch the highlights on YouTube, because rather than sit through a 2-hour show of high spots and false finishes, I'd rather just get it over with in 10 minutes on YouTube. And I'm a dyed-in-the-wool wrestling fan. I buy indie DVDs, not that they're available anymore, you got to get streaming. I'm going to subscribe to that IWTV, because watching this supposedly polished product is bullshit. And you got some really, really talented fucking people in there, but you're not using them right. And like I say, the whole deal is to get people emotionally invested in this thing. You know, I was behind the scenes with a lot of shit. You know, I learned a lot watching Doug Gentry. And, you know, the way he worked it is he gave you the beginning, he gave you the end, and it was your job to fill in the middle. And this kid was a genius. Unfortunately, he passed away at 33 years old from endocarditis. But had he lived, I think he would have been a real huge force in the business today. But sadly, he didn't. And it's just sad that something I thought was that promising has turned into that much of a bag of shit. And I'll just keep on going. You have those 2 YouTube shows, Elevation and Dark. Why don't you produce them like little TV shows and use the guys that you're not giving a lot of exposure to work those shows? Maybe have a Dark champion or something like that. Maybe start a storyline around that. Because basically, I've seen what you're doing. You're throwing in local guys that are just getting squash matches. And the weirdest thing was, you had a tag team with a partner who was deathmatch legend Masada, who was trained by Shawn Michaels, and yet in the tag team, you had him do the job. I mean, seriously, what the fuck? Everybody knows who this guy is. That was the wrong guy to do the job. So again, I don't know what's going on with this shit. And yeah, this is a long meandering thing, but people have been asking me, and you know, here's my answer. I think CM Punk is poison. I think they should let his ass go. He's not worth what they're paying him, and I think he's taken down the whole promotion with him. And Moxley was right. The only reason he's back because he ran out of fucking money. And Moxley was also right saying everybody's tired of him sitting cross-legged in the ring dropping these fucking pipe bombs. So that's my take on the whole situation. This is 42nd Street Pete staying safe. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you on the flip side with another episode, because I think next I got another request about the Avon Theaters and the Avon Films. So we'll see you then.